And now I am pleased to introduce Erik Newman. Erik Newman is with Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories, and he was handpicked by Ed Schweitzer to make his presentation today. I spoke to Ed and said, the biggest news on the Palouse is Schweitzer Engineering adding 850 jobs. Will you come and talk to us more about what that means? And here he is to do it. Please welcome Erik Newman.
Thank you, Shelley. While we're getting the presentation queued up here, thanks everyone for having us today. This is a great venue. Being a finance guy, I love data, especially financial data. So I love this stuff. And I haven't seen anything like this anywhere in our region, of this collection of data all in one spot. I think it's really important. And I'm glad to be here today. Ed was sorry he couldn't be here, so I'm going to be a poor substitute for Ed. But a little bit about me. I'm the finance director at SEL. I've been with the company for a little more than 16 years, so we've seen a lot of growth over that time. I've worked in lots of different parts of the company, from sales to R&D to operations, and so seen lots of different parts. My family's local here, been here since 1979, so we are new. We haven't been here that long. But I want to jump right in to the presentation here. So what I want to do, and I know many of you know already probably a lot about SEL, but I wanted to talk a little bit more in depth about who we are and why we do what we do, which will kind of give you a little more insight into how we look about growth and how we plan for growth, because I think that's probably at the root of many of your questions today. So we live in an electrically interconnected world, and electricity consumption has been growing for quite some time, even though in the last few years, especially in the United States, it's kind of flattened out a little bit. But if you start to look at this chart here, so in 1960, worldwide electrical consumption was 2,000 terawatt hours. So that's about 2 trillion kilowatt hours. So you put that in terms of homes. So in the United States, the average household uses about 11,000 kilowatt hours of electricity per year. So you're looking at about 200 million homes of 1960s consumption, looking at current consumption rates in the U.S. So if you fast forward to the future in 2040, we're going to see 17 plus times that growth. Right? So the point being is that we look at this as not only a market opportunity for SEL in terms of what we look for in growth in the future, but also it's really core, and it's a tremendous amount of responsibility that we have. We have a fundamental belief that everyone should have safe, economical, and reliable access to electric power, no matter their geography in the world or no matter their socioeconomic situation. Right, so we take this as a tremendous responsibility. And that's where we get our mission from, making electric power safer, more reliable, and more economical. This is what we get up every day to do. And for those of you who've talked with Ed or other employees at SEL, this is something that we live for. And we always, whenever we make a decision to do something new, we're always asking the question, what does that have to do with making electric power safer, more reliable, and more economical? So our founder, Dr. Ed Schweitzer, of course, founded SEL in 1982. We sold our first products to Otter Tail Power Company in Fergus Falls, Minnesota in 1984. So more than 30 years we've been here on the Palouse, and Ed has a pretty unique lineage. Both his father and grandfather were entrepreneurs in the electric power industry. Interesting fact, neither Ed nor Ed's father worked for their fathers. They were all independent entrepreneurs and have a real passion for electric power in particular. And SEL was started with Ed's invention of the first digital protective relay. So these are the electronic devices that help protect and monitor the volt power system all over the world. And we talk about, and we show this slide a lot, and we talk about the first digital protective relay, but I just want to talk to you as I was putting this presentation together, stepping back thinking about what that really meant, to put it in perspective, because with SEL, especially on the world stage, we're probably a company you don't want to hear about, because if you hear about us on the evening news, sometimes it's because something bad happened, and we don't want to be in that place. So we're behind the curtain of what you would normally see out there. But I was thinking of a parallel. So think about the computing industry, right? So we used to have, especially in the 60s and early 70s, massive rooms of computing power, and some of these were put together with, cables and even electromechanical devices, right? And so that's the way the electric power system was protected and monitored before digital protective relays. There were large electrical panels with electromechanical equipment, a lot of it still in use even in the United States today. And so Ed comes on the market with a digital processing unit, a digital protective relay that's about the size of a VCR. So all of a sudden, overnight, you go from this very large, expensive electromechanical system to something you could fit in the size of a VCR. It would be like somebody showing up in the computing market in the 60s when you have these massive rooms full of computing power and dropping a PC on the desk overnight and saying this little box can do as much as that big room. That's what the impact of Ed's invention had on this industry. And today, across the world, we compete with the largest companies in the world. And today, you cannot sell a protective relay that isn't a digital protective relay. And when the first features it put in a relay was being able to locate where the exact problem was on the power system. You can't sell one today without it. And that all happened here on the Palouse, right? In its basement. We live our values. And in a lot of cases, and I've worked in public accounting and worked for a lot of companies and been part of a lot of companies. And in a lot of places I've been, everyone has a set of values. And for the most part, my experience has been when we talk about strategy, when we talk about all employee meetings, we talk about the values, but they're pretty much words on paper. And when I first interviewed at SEL, they showed me the values, and I love these values. I share a lot of the values, and I'm sure a lot of you do as well. And I thought, well, that's nice, that's great. I think I could work for a company like this. What I didn't realize, and came to realize after about the first week, how much these values are a core of what we do every day. Every decision we make is based upon these 9 values. So Pete talked a lot about stability of our economy here. And I think being 100% employee-owned is a huge reason of why SEL has been so stable over the years. We saw the graphs on some of the activity from the global financial crisis in 2008, 2009. So in our industry, even though electric power is a pretty stable industry, during that time, many of our partners in that industry and our competitors' business declined 25 to 30%. SEL still grew. So one of the big differences between SEL and those other companies is we're 100% employee-owned. We're not a public company. We don't have to go to the stock market or the bond markets to get capital. Right? We earn every dollar, and we use that to reinvest back into our company. And as a result of that, we don't have to be beholden to Wall Street or quarterly financial reports, right? Or being able to beat the numbers that we give the investors, right? So those public companies, their primary objective is not for their customers, it's not for their employees, it's to increase value for their shareholders. That's how that type of financial situation is set up. At SEL, because we're 100% employee-owned, we can think for the long term, right? We're beholden to our customers and our employees first. Nowhere will you find in our mission, in our values, or in our strategic plan that we're out to make a profit. But we know we take care of those 9 values, and we take care of our mission, right? That profit will come. When you treat people the right way, that profit will come. we've had that sustained growth over time. So in a lot of these industries, you'll see during recessions, you'll see lots of spikes and valleys as you go throughout. And you can see that in their employment numbers. Looking at this graph, and I also noticed last night when I was looking at this, I started in 2000. It happens to be right smack dab in the middle of SEL. So I've been here half of SEL's life. But as you look at this chart, you can see how nice and smooth that slope is, right? So that's from very thoughtful, planned growth, thinking for the long term, right? And knowing that we have a predictable, stable, growing business, right? So talk a little bit more about our plans. Yes, we're expanding, and we're happy to be doing that on the Palouse. We're going to be expanding not only in Pullman, but in other parts of the world as well. Many of you know we have a facility in Mexico that produces electrical panels that the relays that we make here in Pullman and Lewiston go into. And we sell those all over the world. It's a little harder to get those from Mexico to some parts of the world than others. And as a result, we've had a lot of increasing demand from our customers all over the world. And so we're putting together and opening similar facilities in Brazil, in Saudi Arabia, and in India this year. And so we're going to see a lot of growth there. So we have the two buildings that we have in Pullman that we talked about. So the first one is going to be that Zocol Beta building, and it is going to go right behind our existing Zocol manufacture or R&D building. And we're going to be doing research and development activities there. Okay. Second building we talked about is going to be a manufacturing building, and right now this is our working location. That is subject to change. Plans aren't finalized yet. We have filed the plans for the Zocol Beta, and so that construction is going to start hopefully in July. This new manufacturing building will be another 100,000 square feet. And we'll build a lot of our recloser controls and some of the panels that we do in Mexico. We also build those here in Pullman for our customers. We're doing also some additional construction. We purchased a 1230 Hickman Court building, and we're in the middle of remodeling that building right now. That's going to house our property management team. So if you don't know, we're really big into vertical integration, meaning that there are lots of parts that we used to buy that we now make because we can improve the quality and decrease the cost. And we also vertically integrate up. That's how we got into making panels and large control enclosures and building big systems. We also do that with our internal operations. And so doing our own property development was one of those vertical integrations. And so our folks in property deserve a great location to be, and they've kind of had to, even though they're building great facilities for the rest of us, they've kind of had to move around a lot. So it'll be great to have a nice spot for them. And then we're right in the middle of now finishing up improving the roads on Maxwell Drive and Faraday Lane. We just finished some paving, and I know we had the entry to the port there over the last few weeks. We've had the road torn up a lot, and that's back in operation. I know from being one of those that have to drive down the hill during those busy times, going building to building, it's been a great improvement. And we'll finish paving that area. So here's Faraday Lane here. So that'll be another access point, especially up to manufacturing. It'll be a one-way street going east up to this point, and then two-way further, and then we improved Faraday Lane, which is our access to our one building. We've widened that road and are going to be putting in additional paved parking. And then the last project that we're going to be doing in Pullman this year is a remodel of our 2440 manufacturing building entry. But that first part of the manufacturing building was put in operation in 2000, 16 years ago, so it's time to start some updates to that. So we talked about, and I know everyone's heard that we're going to be adding 850 new jobs for these new buildings, and just wanted to make sure we all understand that's over the next few years, so it isn't going to be this year, although we would love to see that growth that fast. But it'll be over the next several years. That's what we have in our 5-year strategic plan to give you an idea of what kind of people will be hiring and will be filling those jobs. About half of those jobs will be in manufacturing. Right, so that those folks will work in that manufacturing building that we're building there. And so a lot of those will be hourly wage jobs, a lot of them entry-level positions. And that'll come clear when I get to some further slides here, talk about what our employees are looking for. The rest of them will be engineering, accounting, finance, sales, and other support functions. So about whenever we grow like this, it's generally going to be about half manufacturing when we do that in Pullman. And to give you a little bit of idea of where SEL employees live, to help give you some more data about when you're looking at your own business plans. Of the employees who are in Pullman, and so this isn't looking at our Lewiston facility, but those who work in the Pullman facility, about half of those live in Pullman. And then when you add Moscow to that, that jumps up to about 85%, so about 31% in Moscow and the remaining in some of the outlying areas. So the bulk of our employees do live in the two main cities that we have in our region. Okay. So we got together with some of our friends from MC, and I know they were here last year and gave a talk, and we were asking ourselves this question, well, what kind of impact is this going to have for the region? I know a lot of you are probably thinking about the same things. We took a look at the data, and of those 850 new positions, there'll be about a good, I'm going to put my economist hat on, a good estimate, right, so not a promise, is about the ripple effect of those jobs. Will be about 240 jobs throughout Whitman and Lake Dot County. If you expand it to include all of the effects on eastern Washington and North Idaho, that will jump up to about 340 jobs. So I think a good rule of thumb to say is for every 3 jobs that we add at SEL, the ripple effect in our area will be 1 job. If you put that in dollars and cents, for about every dollar of new earnings that we have from this growth, about 13 cents you'll see a ripple through the rest of the economy. Okay. So another question I think a lot of you have is what are all these 850 new employees looking for? Right. So as I said, half of them will be manufacturing, and the rest will be engineering, finance, accounting, sales. And so really what we're looking for the most part, is affordable housing. Right. So we want to make sure that there are housing options available for not only our professional employees, but also for those who are starting their careers in manufacturing. We have a lot of high school students as they graduate come to work at SEL first as they're trying to figure out what their interests are and what their passions are. We offer our Path to Your Future program, so any employee who works at SEL more than a year and who has good performance reviews will pay for a good portion of their post-high school education. And we have a lot of employees who take advantage of that. And we have a lot of stories of people starting on the manufacturing floor and becoming managers, directors, and executives. So that's really important to us. Another aspect that we have is zoning opportunities. So we talked a little bit about and I was interested, Shelley, to see the new definitions of how you define this class. I'm not quite sure where I am and where my kids are at. But when we look at the millennials, and I know all of you know millennials, I'm sure, or have them as children like I do. And so millennials are looking for places that are a little more urban. They're looking for good locations close to restaurants, to bars, and other activities. I know my daughter graduated from the University of Idaho, and she loved living downtown Moscow. That's where she wanted to be. That's where her friends were. That's where the activities she liked to participate in. And our employees, a lot of our young employees are looking for the same thing. So we're competing with other labor markets, not only Spokane, but we're competing with Seattle, we're competing with Chicago, we're competing with Los Angeles. We're competing for engineers and young upcoming professionals from all over. We're competing with Silicon Valley, right? And so we want to be able to have a lot of the same amenities in the region that those folks enjoy. Of course, then we also have our young families, and many of those folks graduated from WSU or University of Idaho, did not grow up here, but went away and started their careers elsewhere and had fond memories of living on the Palouse and wanted to raise their families there, and they've come back. And so having those housing opportunities for those young families is also really important. Right? And so that's when we get into optionality. So we're looking for single-family, multifamily housing, condos, townhomes, a lot of mixed-use activities that are, so you have activities very close to where people live. That's what our employees are looking for. And I can tell from the presentations earlier that both Pullman and Moscow has a direction where you're heading, and I'm really happy and pleased to see that. So that's really cool. So one of the things we like to say at SCL is and this is from Alan Kay, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. Right? And we've been inventing this on the Palouse for the past 30 plus years. And we know a lot of our counterparts and other entrepreneurs in the region have been doing the same thing. And we have a great opportunity to keep driving for the future. So we expected those 850 employees. That's about what we've grown over the last 5 years. So we see that going into the next 5 years and into the future. So it's steady as she goes. So the same growth that we've experienced in the past in this region, I think we can count on for the next 5 years and into the future. And if we go back to the first slide and look at the electric power consumption, we literally are just scratching the surface. We are just getting started as a company. We have not even come close to reaching our full potential. And so with that, I'd like to thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have a question? Okay. Here you go.
So you start the company here, and you have to compete with Silicon Valley and Seattle and all those places. What do you attribute your success to so far in winning that battle? And how are you waging the human resources war in the future? What do you say to some young millennial that says, "Why should I come work for you?"
It's a great question, and one we ask ourselves every day, because we are a smaller area, right? And a lot of those young folks are looking for big cities. And we're able to convince a lot of them to come to SEL because of our reputation as an employer, because of our values. We do a lot of work in universities all over the world. And so we have a very liberal, called a relay donation program. So any university who wants to put together an electric power lab, we will provide all the equipment free of charge. And we've been doing that for many years. And so as a result, we have a lot of really strong relationships with higher education institutions all over the world. And so we get to know these students. And so they start to learn about SEL. And when they want to go into the electric power industry, SEL is one of the companies that they look for. So that helps a lot. We have a great recruiting team who is not only, we do the traditional ads, but we go out and recruit and look for people. And we do have offices in those other places. We have offices in Los Angeles and in Seattle and in Chicago, Houston, Charlotte, North Carolina, all over the place. And so we have, many times we'll hire into those offices, and then once they've worked at SEL for a while, and maybe they've gotten married and started a family, and many of those people end up in Pullman. And not only from all over the United States, but from all over the world. I mean, we are not only with both universities, two global communities with SCL. We are competing on a global level. We have over 100 offices in 24 different countries. And so, of course, our largest contingent, a little less than half of our total employees live and work in our Pullman and Lewiston facilities. But another 2,000 work outside of Pullman and Lewiston. And so that's a great base, too, that we also attract from. So we're able to get them into a place where that is meeting their needs better for the part they're at in their life. Later on, we'll see them here. And we see it happen the other way, too. And so one of the things we really encourage is movement around the company because it gives us much more broadly experienced folks. Because with that kind of growth, we need a ton of leaders too. That answer your question?
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Eric.
And I'll stick around afterwards.
Thank you. That was a terrific presentation. When I went to them, I said, what is that going to do for us? So he's given us the numbers. If we take that many employees and we take it over 5 years, and we take 50% of them in the Pullman market, that gives you an idea of how many homes need to be built in the market, and the same thing for Moscow and the outlying areas. So I think it's terrific. It's fabulous for the area that we have Schweitzer manufacturing on the Palouse. So it's terrific. We have people that have an opportunity to come back home. We have Economic Modeling Specialists Inc., and we have a lot of other businesses that are growing on the Palouse. So, since we've had a very big presentation, is there any questions of any of the other presenters that presented today? With that, I want to thank you very much for attending the Palouse Commercial Real Estate Market Review for 2016. It takes us a whole year to pull this data together. Next year it'll be in Moscow, so we'll let you know when and where, and thank you again. Have a great summer.